Dustin Long, NBC Sports. Justin, can you give me a sense of, with racing on a street course or a road course, I guess the thought might be there's more room for aggression or for guys to step out and do more things in theory because you're closer together. Now, I don't know, maybe you'd argue as guys get separated more and it's not as likely as at some other tracks. Can you give me a sense of how close it is and how much aggression? And I know last year was the wet was a little bit different, but what it might be? Do you anticipate a raised level than a short track?
I think that's TBD. And how the track kind of wears in, I think, will judge a lot of that, right? I think the Cup race with the next gen car, we've seen it be a lot more aggressive than on the Xfinity side. But to be honest, I mean, road racing for us has become kind of a full contact sport, unfortunately. The negative to here is that you're likely to be in the crash if you're trying to be the aggressor, right? It's not like a place. Coda is a great example. There's so much runoff and so much space to the outside walls. I mean, that's probably the exact extreme opposite of what this place is. You can put somebody in a bad position, get them offline, maybe even send them off the racetrack, and it's really no harm, no foul to your own self or to your own race, right? Here, if you got a guy loose getting in the corner and he happens to hit the outside wall, well, the next thing he does is bounce back across the racetrack, and 9 times out of 10, he collects you in that crash, right? We saw a lot of crashes last year at turn 6 where guys missed the braking zone and kind of went straight. Kyle Busch is a great example. Probably the wildest crash in my recent memory of he drove like all the way to the center of the roof and the tire barrier backed out, and we're like, oh man, the car doesn't look that bad. He didn't even come to pit road, right? So I think that there are advantages and disadvantages. One thing SVG did last year in the Cup Series race that I think stood out to everybody, and it's changed the game a little bit, is that he was aggressive, but he wasn't malicious in that. Where he made his advantage was he made 0 mistakes and he put his car at the absolute limit everywhere, right? I think a lot of guys, when you come to a street course, because none of us have ever really done it, you tend to leave a little bit of a gap, right? You leave that little bit of runoff that if I make a mistake, I need that extra 6 inches or a foot, or maybe it's 5 feet in some people's mindset, but he put the car at the absolute limit on the fence every lap and didn't make any mistakes. And I think that that's really changed. I mean, if you look at some of the other races this year, I think we've seen that out of Xfinity Series, Truck Series, Cup Series. I think we've seen guys putting themselves in more of that limit for when they get to a place like this, that they're going to know where that's at. So I'll be interested to see what the racing is like, because now that you're pushing yourself to the limit, there is no room for error, right? So if you get to being the aggressor or even having somebody behind you that is trying to be aggressive, how you manage that, I think is going to be is going to dictate how your race goes. So I think you're going to have to be really mindful of who you're racing with and what their aggression level is, and kind of temper yours accordingly.
I understand in athletics that nothing is determined on paper. It's when it is on the field or the track.
We're playing Moneyball.
But in this event, or this particularly for the Xfinity race, I think that the view is SVG is the potential, overwhelming or one of the overwhelming favorites. So even for your experience and what you've been able to do on road courses, what do you have to do to even be at that level? Or is he still, again, we'll find out Saturday, but going into this event, do you feel like he's still head and shoulders above people based off of Portland and Sonoma? Or what is it that's going to take for you to challenge him?
Sonoma, I would say he was the best car, but I wouldn't say he was the best car in Portland by any stretch, right? And I think he did a really good job. Obviously, he won the race, but I think things go a little bit differently, and he probably runs 4th or 5th, right? I do think that last year in the Cup Series car, I mean, he's been very vocal about it, that the Cup Series car matches way more in line with what he's used to. So do I think he's the favorite? Yeah, I still think he's the favorite, but I think he's more of the favorite for Sunday than he is for Saturday, right? I think he's more of the favorite in the next-gen car than he is in the Xfinity Series car. Do I think that he's going to be the guy to beat? Yes, but I do think that this car will be a lot more different than what he's comfortable in, and so I think he's going to have to manage that. Now, he's a great street racer. He's he's done phenomenally in the starts that he's made in that regard. So, I think that the more time he gets in the car, the more comfortable he gets. I mean, we've even seen that on ovals, right? The more he's able to get more time on an oval, the better he gets, and super competitive. But I do think this weekend will be interesting. With the track being dry. I mean, last year I think with the track being wet, he had a significant advantage in the wet over everybody else. So I will be very interesting to see what that looks like. Now, I also know that every Cup driver has been studying SMT data, and every Cup driver has every intention of driving just like SVG did last year. Be very interesting how that works out. Good for them. I'm not changing my driving style. I'm going to go after it and go have some fun. But, I do think that it will be very interesting to see kind of, where that looks like. Now, one of the advantages I think he will have is I think he'll get up to speed a lot faster than everybody else. So, early in the weekend, early tomorrow morning, he'll be the fastest car by far. And then as everybody gets comfortable and gets their setups kind of honed in, I think you'll see some guys maybe get a little bit closer. But we got a lot of good road racers, too, in our series and in that will come out and I think be really, really successful tomorrow. So I'm excited to see what it looks like. I mean, he's definitely going to be the target. See how that goes.
Zach Sterniolo, NASCAR.com. To the point of SVG, the fact that he has laps here in the Cup car, do you feel like that might be a disadvantage just because of what things he may have to unlearn, just because the brakes are so much worse comparatively from Cup to Xfinity? Things along those lines, can he be as aggressive in the Xfinity car? So things like that, can that actually be a disadvantage to him in the Xfinity race?
Yes, but I don't know that it's going to be. I think he's a talented enough race car driver that he's going to adapt. I mean, we see guys do double duty regularly. Anytime I drive the Cup car and you go through the sequential, it's always hard to come back to the AH pattern, right? It's easy to go to the sequential. It's pretty common sense, right? Like, it just pull back to go faster and go forward to go slower. But, I do think that there will be things that the brakes are a great example. It does stop better. Now, that being said, the Xfinity car stops really, really well when you have the short track package and you have all the brakes like we have here. So, while there will be subtle differences, I think when you wrap your head around what car you climbed in, I mean, the dashes are significantly different. The visuals out the windshield are significantly different. Once you climb in that car, you kind of flip that switch of, okay, this is an Xfinity car. It doesn't have grip. It's probably going to be a lot higher. It's going to roll a lot more. It's not going to stop as well. You go through all those things and you kind of have a mental checklist. You take a good pilot, right? They can go fly a 747 and turn right around and get in a little Cessna or something and take off and not have any issues, right? They might be better in one versus the other, but they're still going to be able to do it. And I think that's no different than where SVG is going to be at this weekend. And he's going to be fast at both of them. He's going to, he's obviously super fast in the Cup Series car. He's going to be super fast in the Xfinity Series car too.
Kelly Crandall, Racer.com. Justin, as you're talking there about expectations for this weekend, because weather we're not expecting to be a variable, Austin Cindric said earlier this week that who knows, maybe that'll just make people more confident and they all will just dive it off into the tire barriers, right? So what are you expecting in terms of, do you think on a dry course this weekend, even in practice, we're going to see folks that are a little more confident that maybe they have to learn quickly this weekend where that line is before going into the races?
Confidence is one of those things that is our sport is all about it, right? You got to have confidence in your car. You got to have confidence in yourself, confidence in, that you're going to be right when you get here, all those things. But it's a heck of a drug, and it'll make you do a lot of stupid stuff. Would it surprise me if that happens? No, not at all. I mean, I think that, everybody wants to come here and go as fast as they can. I think last year was so unique. I think guys felt like that they didn't do as good of a job as they should have. I think if you look at last year, you look at the rundown of especially the Cup Series, there were more guys that ran significantly better than they had at any other racetrack than I think we've seen any place that we've even, any new racetrack we've gone to. And it was so kind of wild to watch. And I think some guys got in their own head, right? They weren't confident in what they were doing. Now, when you get out there this weekend and it's dry and everybody's going to be now we've got a year under our belt and everybody says, oh, we've got to figure it out. Again, going back to SVG, what he did last year was he put the car at the limit, but he didn't make mistakes. Like when you watch his laps, like He didn't wheel hop. He didn't lock the front tires. He didn't miss an apex. He didn't brush the outside wall or the inside wall. Those are all things that kind of the guys that have done this for years, they all made those mistakes, right? They try to find the limit of the braking zone and they lock the fronts up. Well, that spots a set of tires, and now you lose some practice time. They brush the wall on corner exit because they think they can get a little bit extra and the car slides and hits the wall. Knowing where to place your car and how to kind of position yourself is so important at these. And I don't know that confidence fixes that. Like, that's the thing that's funny is like, you can do a lot of things with a lot of confidence, and you can do a lot of things with a great race car, but knowing where the limit is at all times and being able to hit those marks is what I feel like is super important. That's why I think a guy like SVG does such a great job. He's able to do that. AJ Allmendinger does a great job of that, right? He's able to do that. Last year, really, even Cole did that in the Xfinity Series race. He just put himself in the right spots and took up all the real estate that he needed to take up and not any extra. And I think that's going to be the most important piece this weekend. And I think the guys that are able to hit their marks and not make mistakes at a high rate of speed are going to be the ones that are going to be the ones to beat.
Noah Poser, Northwestern. How does having all these good road racers you mentioned in the series, especially this weekend, how does it impact your level of preparation for these types of tracks? And does it provide any additional motivation for a good road racer in your own right to break that growing road course winless streak of yours?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to answer your second question first, I think the want to run good is higher than it's ever been, right? I feel like over the last 10 years of this sport, road racing has evolved significantly, right? I mean, we've seen more guys do crossovers, more guys are going and running other types of, road racing type cars, and being competitive, right? Like, not just going to do it to be there. They're actually going and being competitive. You've got a lot of guys that are coming into our sport that have a lot of road racing experience. I mean, we had 3 supercar drivers at where was the last road course we ran? Sonoma. We had 3 supercar drivers in the field at Sonoma, right? Or no, I guess SVG didn't run. There would have been 3 if he was in the race for the Cup Series. So, I think that we've seen a lot more kind of outside influence be able to come in and obviously adapt really well and run good. But I think preparation over the last 10 years has ramped up over and over and over again. And, what was once kind of a get through it and get to the next race is now hey, these are a major staple in our series. You wouldn't just say, a short track doesn't mean anything, I'm not going to go put any preparation in, because we now have almost equal short tracks to road racing, right? So if you're going to be good at one, you might as well be good at another. So I think for all of us, we've all upped our game. For me personally, I've always loved road racing. I think coming from a dirt background of, kind of adapting to surfaces and not ever really being intent on, where the fast line is, sometimes having to lift early to be able to come off the corner faster. Those are all things that oval racing doesn't necessarily, especially if you grow up short track asphalt oval racing, it doesn't necessarily normally teach you. So, I'm working harder at it. The hard part about getting older is you're definitely not as fast as you were when you were younger as far as reaction time and all that fun stuff. So, I have to almost do a better job than some of the younger guys do to make sure that I'm prepared and ready to go. But SVG is not any younger than me, so I feel like there's hope. But, I think it's, it's definitely, we've all changed and we've all adapted. And I do feel like that it's gotten more competitive on the road racing side of things. And the cars have gotten stronger. I think that's a piece we leave out a lot. But, in years past, when I first started in the sport, you save brakes. You save body panels, right? If you knock the body off of it early on in a race, you were just out. You save suspension pieces. Now, guys just kind of huck it in there and 8 tires stick better than 4 a lot of times. And I think that we've lost some of the what made good racers in this sport, what made them good on road courses was they were able to manage the weekend. And a lot of the guys that came in and you had some of the ringers, but a lot of the ringers would have issues because their car, they would burn the brakes off of it or break the transmissions, things like that. And so I think that now that the cars are more resilient and they're stronger, it lends itself more to a guy that's a supercar or GTD type driver that can come in and be successful. And I think that we've seen that. And so as that happens, we have to elevate our game and obviously be equally as good as what they are. I would tell you that SVG says the same thing about the oval racers when he goes and runs oval, right? We talked quite a bit at Iowa after he had his incident in practice, and I just went through some of the things that I saw from following him right before he crashed that I would have done differently. And, when we spoke about it, he was like, it makes sense. Obviously, the end result is I still crashed a car, but, it makes sense. And so then in the race, he tried to work on those things. It ultimately got himself in a different situation. But, I think as he's oval racing, he's trying to adapt no different than we do when we go, road racing. And so I think it's been very interesting to kind of see all of us try to elevate our game to be successful, on a regular basis.